Welcome everyone, Dylan Gemelli here today with a brand new video for you, and today I am going to discuss my worst steroid experiences. But before we get into that, just a big shout out and thank you to everybody out there watching and supporting the channel. I literally cannot thank you enough. If you haven't yet, please like, share, subscribe, comment. Anything that you do to interact with the channel is going to help it grow, and that's obviously going to allow me to produce more and more content for you each and every day. Also, today's video is sponsored by letsgetchecked.com. Now, letsgetchecked.com specializes in at-home blood testing. All you have to do is go to the website, check out all of the tests. They have them for men and women. They have wellness, hormonal. They have damn near anything that you could want. Pick out whatever that you want to order it. They're going to mail you the kit in the mail. You need to get online and register it. Provide the sample, ship it back. You're going to get results extremely fast. They'll notify you. They'll send them by email. They've got doctors and nurses there damn near 24/7. They take questions, concerns, anything that you have about your blood work. So check them out. Letsgetchecked.com. They are the best at what they do. Coupon code Gemelli30 will save you 30%. All right, so I'm going to give you the worst experiences that I've had with steroid use. I've got several that I'm going to give you, and I have to go back in time for a lot of these, especially since I have really not used a whole lot much of anything the last several years. Very, very little amounts even of SARMs or anything, just my TRT. So we're going to go way back, and I did a video on this before, but one of my worst experiences, but I guess it wasn't terrible, but it was a bad experience because I thought that I was running Test, Masteron, and Anavar. And I gained, I don't know, about 10, 12 pounds the first 2.5 weeks, and I thought, okay, I know what I know what I'm eating, I know about what I'm using, and I do not get it. My strength was going through the roof. The size was coming out of nowhere, and I'm like, okay, this is my first cycle where I've actually run with testosterone and not just pro hormones or orals on their own. And I hadn't run Masteron either, and I thought, man, this is not everything I've ever seen, coached, learned about Masteron, and it's certainly not Anavar, which I had used once in the past. And I thought, man, am I either A, that undersized, or am I that big of a responder to testosterone? And I was using Test Prop on my first time injecting, which is not smart and not something I would recommend. Running short esters on your first time through, just horrible, going against everything that I know better than. But let's just forget about that at this point. Gaining that amount of size, well, I was taking D-ball, which is bad on several instances. One, I'm clearly not accomplishing what I intended to accomplish. Now, granted, my strength, I was thrilled with the way D-ball makes you feel. It was unreal. And I was like, okay, because this is not really dirty size. I can tell I've, not as cut as I was, but I eat so clean. But the problem is I'm so estrogen prone. So running a good amount of tests with D-ball, not running enough aromatase inhibitor because I assumed I was running Anavar. Well, when it was found out that I had D-ball, found that out from the place that I had got it from on a bad batch that had been produced, somehow mislabeled, long story. Okay, regardless, I used D-ball, and so the cycle itself threw me for a huge loop. It did mess with my head a little bit because I didn't know what exactly was going on. Thought I didn't know what I was talking about, what I was doing, questioning everything. Well, it made sense after we figured it out. So that would be the strongest damn Anavar and Masteron that you have ever seen. So I wouldn't say it was a horrible experience, but it wasn't what it was supposed to be, and so I would put that as one of my worst experiences. The time I used halotestin was absolutely bad on all levels. Look, I've talked about this before, about should you even use halotestin in the video that I did. I am one of them people I don't let things like that externally. Even when I would drink, I was pretty damn good about not being so sloppy or, whatever. Generally in pretty good control. Obviously, everybody's had their times, whatever, but for the most part. So what halotestin did to me, making me so angry and so aggressive for somebody that doesn't really have that kind of, some people are just like that at the drop of a dime, or they're mentally off, whatever. I've been pretty good about that stuff. I was just the biggest jerk, the worst attitude, the shortest fuse, Everything was pissing me off. I mean, everything and anything you could possibly think of or doing. And once I realized that, when I was done with it, and then my wife had said to me, please, whatever that was, don't use that again. It broke my heart. I never wanted to touch it again. The way that it made me feel and act, I'll never forget that. I never want to feel like that again. I never want to do it. And that's why I said specifically in that video, the best way to use halotestin is to not use it. So for me, horrible experience. It made me look tremendous. Okay, so let's say that one thing about it made me extremely strong, but everything that went along with that, no thanks, never again, wouldn't even consider it. Number 3 was the time that I stacked Tren and Deca. It did not work out for me. And I definitely know I went too high on them both, doing like 400 each, because I had a special blend of it specifically made for me. So I do wonder if it was overdosed on top of that. But it just, it was too much. You should have never done a blend like that, which I completely know better than, and I don't like blends as it is. I went against the grain on everything that I taught, believed in, whatever, tried to do something, stepped out of the box, did something I knew I shouldn't have done, and it was a horrible experience. I felt just mental anguish on that cycle because of there's been a couple times where it just like crushed libido, crushed the way I feel, made me just feel all the way around mentally off. And that was one of them. I really, really, really regret that one in all facets, using it, doing it. That was terrible, and it really got me mentally. And so that, anything that affects you mentally like that and that, it's just not worth it in my book. So never again would I stack Tren and Deca or NPP, whatever the case. No thanks. Number 2, I've talked about this so many times. It was Superdrol. I should say Ultradrol, which is very similar to Superdrol. Antaeus Labs, Pro Hormone. You can go back and find it. I stacked it with their Trenazone, which is like their spray-on type of Tren version. I cannot tell you how terrible this was for me all the way around. I felt like ick, like just disgusting. I don't know what it was. I just never felt good on it. I got so strong and gained so much size. It was insane how fast. But man, I was angry. I was tired. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to get out of bed. It was horrible. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to hear anybody fucking talk to me. I didn't want anything. It was like the longest few weeks that I ever experienced. And it just, I felt like it set me back a year. Even though it didn't, I felt like it did. I was just so off and just felt horrific. I just absolutely despise that shit. Like, I can't even explain to you. I never, ever wanted to be in the same room as it again. So, number 2, Superdrol. Number 1 is probably the first time I used Trenbolone, although I could point out a couple instances, but that was the time that I have never had anything throw me off emotionally and mentally ever like this did. The way that this made me feel emotionally, because I overdid it and I abused it, and it was making me think I was just the worst person that ever lived. The way that it threw me off emotionally and mentally was it's something that has stuck with me that I've never forgotten. I mean, I remember just being useless, sitting on the couch during the day, not accomplishing anything, feeling sorry for myself, just depressed as can be, not knowing why half the time. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. And it was, first of all, my first time using Tren, and I just kept getting greedier and greedier because it was so unreal when I started it. And then using a completely different blend that was a custom blend that was made by a UGL that was absolutely insane on what it could do. But your first time with Tren, you should never do anything like that. It should be Tren acetate. I've talked about this and how to do it. And I went completely against the grain and just did it however I wanted to do it. And that was just a disaster and a mess. It was the worst. Now, as I had other experiences with Tren, because I didn't have the night sweats on that one. Oh boy, the second time that I ran it, and we were in Washington at that time, And it was cold during the winter. It wasn't freezing, but it was cold. I mean, and it rained all the time, so it made it colder. And the amount, the pool, and I was on tren inundate, the pools of sweat at night for that entire cycle. And I ran tren way too long that cycle. It was long. It was like 14 weeks of tren. And my wife had to endure that for the damn near the whole cycle. And then I stopped and we thought, okay, it's finally going to stop. Well, tren inundate, especially running it that long, that takes weeks to get out of your system. So I had to continue to suffer through that. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. But that first time, the emotional, that will be embedded in my head forever, that I never want to feel like that again. So those are my worst experiences with steroids that I can talk about. I hope that sheds some light for people that are wondering or might be considering certain things. That's just my experience. Not saying you'd have that. We all respond differently. We all sometimes run them too long, too much, whatever the case may be. But just wanted to give you guys some insight on my worst experiences personally. So that being said, stay tuned for plenty more to come. Dylan Gemelli signing off.